Welcome to this section. Here we will start with logging, which is very simple and useful. It's one of those things that no production level software will work without. So it's going to be a tool that will make your life much easier in terms of how you can debug your program or how can you find out what's going wrong, what other programs are doing. So all of these things are going to come in handy when you are trying to move from beginner to an intermediate or an advanced level. So let's start with a very simple example. In this example, what we are doing, we are taking input from user and what we want to see as output is x divided by y. So when I run this program, I'll enter first number, let's say 6, and let's say second number is 2. So my output would be 3. And what if I try to divide a number with 0? So if I run this program again and if I enter first number as 6, second number as 0, then we got the 0 division error. Now imagine that you downloaded a software from internet, or let's say you got a new job and you have a software that you have to work with, but you are not really sure how it is working. So as a programmer, job involves just as much reading code as it does writing code. In fact, most of the time you have to read code and you have to do very little of writing of the code, isn't it? So you need to understand how code works. And if you are a beginner level programmer, then what you would do is probably you would go ahead and insert some print statements. So for example, you added a print statement in the second line where you would want to see that what number that user has entered in the first line. Similarly, you would add another statement here as well. So if you have a code which may have around 100 lines, then you would add print statements and then you'll understand the code. And once you understand the code, what you'll do, you'll go back again and remove all these print statements because you don't want to release your code to the end user in which it is outputting all this stuff, right? We don't want that because this is a lot of information and end user doesn't need to see all of them. Now we have to go back and uncomment all of this. And this gets logged more problematic, especially when you consider the fact that this code is released to the server and you can't change them easily. So this is very real problem in the real world. So the way that we are going to solve this is we are going to use what we call logging. And that's the focus for this particular video. So Python has a built-in logging module. And module is simply called logging. So you will say import logging. And it should be imported at the beginning of your script. Now, depending on the type of information, logging data is divided according to the following 6 levels in Python. So one is critical, another one is error, then we have warning, then we have info, and we have debug level, and last we have not set. Not set is not really a level, it only represents that level is not set. So when I execute it, I'll see the numbers that are associated with these levels. So as per these numbers, you see the highest is critical and that represents a very serious problem that needs high attention. Then we have error, which also represents a serious error but not as much as we have critical. We have warning level that basically represents a warning message, some caution that needed. So it is basically an alert to the programmer. Then we have info that represents a message with some important information. We have debug, which represents a message with all debugging information. And last one, we have not set that basically represent that level is not set. So if you don't set any logging level, by default, while executing the Python program, only warning and higher level messages will be displayed. Let's look at this with the program that create a log file and write default level messages. Now it is highly recommended to store complete application flow and exception information to a file. So we need to create a file to store messages and we have to specify which level message requires to store. And we can do this by using basic config function of logging module. So I'll say logging.basicconfig and here I'll mention the file name. I can mention like this. And if we want to set a level, then we can set it like this. And then let's say we have all the logging messages in our program. So we have these statements with all the different logging. In the file name, I can mention the drive path, that is this. And since I'm on Windows, so I'll mention // here. And now when I run it, this file will be created on this path. So let's open this file here in the Jupyter notebook. Now here you can see that only warning and higher level messages are printed here in the log file because we set the level as warning. So these 3 level messages are printed. But even if we don't set the level, so if I remove it from here and if I run it again, I'll refresh this file, we see again the same output as before. because by default it is taking warning level. Now another thing to observe here is that data is appending to the log file. So append is default mode, but what if we don't want to append the output to the log file? Then we can use a property that is file mode. So I'll say file mode equals to write means W. So when I now run this program and when we refresh this file, now you see that the data is overridden. So if I want to have it in append mode, then I can replace W with A. So by default, level is warning level and file mode is append mode. And if I don't mention any details here in the basic config function, then if I run it, I'll see the output in console, not in file, right? So by default, it took warning level, and that is why warning level messages and the higher level messages are printed here in the output. Now if I set the logging level as debug, so I'll say level equals to logging.debug, and now when I run it, you see that in output we got the debug level messages and all the other high level messages, right? So this is as simple as that. Now in the production software, we want these messages in a different format. For example, we want to see the messages with the date time when it was logged. So how can we format it? We can say format equals to, I'll say ASC time, then colon, I'll say level name, and then I'll say message. So now when I run it, I'll see the logging messages in this format. So I have date and time, then I have level name, and then message. We can format the date time as well. So I'll add the date format like this. And now when I run it, I'll get the output in this date time format. So now if we go back to the program where we were dividing the two numbers, so that is the program. And if I run it, I'll say 6, second number is 0. Then we get the 0 division error. Now if I put it in try catch block, so I'll keep all these lines under try block. And now I'll have the except block where we are handling this error. And we are printing this message on console. So if I run it again, so I'll say 6, second number is 0. Then I'll get this output. Now if I want to add the logging statements here, so what I'll do, I'll import the logging module, and now here I'll say logging.exception message. So we have one exception method under logging module that is used to print exception messages. So now when I run it, I'll say 6, 0. Then you see that we have a logging message that is in the date time format. Then we have the logging level defined, and then we have the message that is generated with this error. And at last we have the print statement that is mentioned here. And of course we have a choice to have this logging in file. So this was about the basic logging. Now we have one advanced logging module feature that is logger. And it is highly recommended to use the logger because it provides several extra features. Now let's see how to use this logger. Now in order to create the logger object, what you'll need to do, you'll need to import the logging module and you need to call a function getLogger. You need to mention the logger name that you want to keep. So here I'll say logger example, and this function will return the logger object. Now by default, logger will set to warning level. And if we want to change the logging level, then we can say logger.setLevel, and here you'll mention that we want debug log to set. Now if I want logging messages to be printed on console, then I'll have to get console handler. And how can I get it? I can say logging.streamHandler. Then you'll need to get the formatter. How can I get the formatter now? I'll say logging.formatter, and here I'll mention the format that I want to have it in our logging messages. Now the next step would be to set this formatter to the console handler. And how can we set it? We can say console handler dot set formatter, and I'll pass formatter object here. Now I'll add console handler to the logger. So I'll say logger dot add handler, and we can pass the console handler here. So what we did, we got the logger object, we got the console handler object, then we got the formatter, we set the formatter to the console handler, and then we added console handler to the logger, right? Now I'll add the logging messages. So since we have the debug level set, we would expect to have all these messages printed in our output. So let's run this program now. And when I run it, you see that we got the expected output. Now if you really want to know that whether this time is AM or PM, then you can add another parameter here, that is %p. So now when I run it again, you see that we have now AM or PM captured in the output. Now here we are missing the forward slash between month and year. So you can add this forward slash here and run it. So we will get the expected output then. Now similarly, you can do the same for file handler as well. So if I want these logs to have it in file instead of console, then I'll comment this line and I'll add this another line. Here I can mention the file name, let's say filehandler.log. I can also define mode and then here, and then I'll comment this line as well. I'll add another line and I'll say it file handler, and we are done. So this is as simple as that, right? So this way you can send logs to the different destinations as per your requirement, right? For example, let's say in production situation, if your code is throwing critical errors, you may want to be notified immediately via email or SMS messages. But in case of successful execution, you may want to have the confirmation recorded in a file. So if I now try to write the pseudocode for this scenario, so I'll have the database connection first. Then if the connection is not established, then this would be a critical error for my business. So I'll say if DB connection is null, then I would want to be notified via email. So I'll say email logger.critical and I mention the error message that database connection failed and I'll exit from here. Else, in the successful execution, I would want the logs to be placed in file. So I'll say file logger.info, I'll say database connection established, and then I process the rest of the data. In this video, we understood that logging module is flexible and easy to use. And it is very important to keep track of all the logging records and displaying the appropriate message to the end user. You realize that these tools are not just for the explanation. If you start using them, they are going to make your life much easier. So whenever you write any program in future, start writing logging. So that's it for this video and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.